Shalom, and welcome to Parsha Highlights and Insights. This is Rabbi Abraham Fischer. This week's Parsha is Vayeitzei, which tells of the adventures, we might say, of Yaakov when he is living away from home. Remember that at the end of the last week's Parsha, Yaakov needed to leave home both because his life was in danger, his brother wanted to kill him, and also because he has yet to marry a wife. And so the idea is that he will go to live with his uncle Lavan, where he'll be far away from Esav and safe from Esav. And also, he may be able to find a wife from within the family, from among the daughters of Lavan. The parasha, we might say, is divided into 6 parts, although if you pay close attention in the Torah, it's really all, almost entirely all one big parasha with no spaces. First part of the parasha is on the way to the house of Lavan. Yaakov is traveling. He stops at a place and goes to sleep and has a dream. It is the vision of the ladder that connects heaven and earth with angels going up and down. And Hashem speaks to him and tells him that he will take care of him and protect him and ultimately bring him back home safely. And when Yaakov wakes up, he dedicates the stone that he had placed at his head by pouring oil on it. And he makes a vow that when Hashem fulfills these promises, he will come back to this place and make it into a proper house for Hashem, a proper sanctuary. Uh, and until then, though, Yaakov is going to be traveling. And so we come to the second part of the parasha, Yaakov coming to the house of Lavan. Yaakov travels and he finds himself in the vicinity of Uncle Lavan's city, which is called Haran. And Yaakov encounters a number of shepherds gathered together around the well where they would give water to the flock to drink. But they explained to him that it's only possible for them to water the flock when all of the local shepherds have gathered together with their flocks. And then there's enough manpower to roll away the very large stone that is blocking the use of the water. Yaakov meets Rachel for the first time, and he single-handedly removes the stone from the opening the well and also waters the flock of Lavan, his uncle. In the third part of the parasha, which is really the largest part of the parasha, it's how Yaakov builds his family. Yaakov goes to live with Lavan, and after about a month, Yaakov and Lavan have to discuss Yaakov's continuing to stay there and what kind of salary he is going to have. So Yaakov offers to work for 7 years for Lavan, at the end of which time he asks that he be able to marry Rachel. And Lavan agrees to this. Yaakov works for 7 years, and when the 7 years are over, it's time to make the wedding. So Lavan makes the wedding, but during the course of the wedding, Lavan brings his older daughter, Leah, to the tent where Yaakov is to be found. And when he wakes up in the morning, when it's light, he's able to discover that he is not married to Rachel at all, but rather to her older sister, Leah. Lavan has an excuse, which we'll talk a little bit more about at the end. But essentially what he's saying is that it is not proper in this place to allow the younger to marry before the older one does. And so, and Lavan and Yaakov come to another agreement. At the end of the week, Yaakov will marry Rachel, but he must commit to working for another 7 years. Zilpah, one of Lavan's maid servants, is given to Leah as a handmaid. At the end of the week, Yaakov does marry Rachel, and he begins his second set of 7 years work. Rachel also receives a handmaiden as a wedding gift. She receives Bilhah, one of Lavan's own handmaidens, given to his other daughter as a wedding present. And it's very clear that Yaakov loves Rachel more than he does Leah. Because of this, Hashem opens up Leah's womb, makes it possible for her to begin having children, and so she does. She has her first 4 children, more or less what we might say in succession. And they're named in order: Ruvain, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. And the Torah explains the basis of each of those names. After having those 4 sons, Leah stops having children for a while, and Rachel, who has not had any children, she remains barren, decides that she is going to help things out by doing something that Sarah did with Abraham, namely, Rachel takes her maidservant Bilhah and gives her to Yaakov to bear children. And in a sense, those children would be regarded as Rachel's. And Yaakov and Bilhah have 2 children. Their names are Dan and Naphtali. Leah, who has stopped giving birth for a while, gives her maidservant Zilpah to Yaakov to bear him 2 children, and their names are Gad and Asher. So the family is growing. We're told about a little incident in which Ruvain, who's the oldest of the children, but he must be just a few years old, maybe 4 years old or so, discovers some beautiful dudaim out in the field. The nature of the dudaim is not exactly known, but it seems to be that there's some kind of flower, and Ruvain receives them and decides he's going to bring them home to his mother, Leah. And as he does, Rachel observes this and says to Leah she wants the dudaim instead of Leah. And Leah has some sharp words for Rachel. But in the end, they come to an agreement that Rachel will receive the dudaim, but in exchange, she offers that night, which would have been her night, with Yaakov in exchange. And then Leah has her final children, 2 more boys, Yisachar and Zvulun, and a girl named Dinah. And finally, after all of this, Rachel herself conceives and is able to have a child, and his name is Yosef. In the next part of the Parsha, Yaakov is going to support his family, because so far he's been working for Lavan, but he hasn't grown his wealth at all, and he's just been working, and he has a wife and children now, and he is building up his family. But now that those 14 years are over, 14 years, 7 per wife, it is time for Yaakov to begin making some kind of profit for his own family. And so Yaakov and Lavan come to an agreement. Lavan wants Yaakov to remain, and Yaakov says that as his salary, he will receive those sheep and goats that have different coloration, spotted, speckled, and so on. Lavan, it seems, tries to trick Yaakov. And so Yaakov uses sticks, wands, and with those wands, by placing them strategically where the goats and the sheep can see these wands while they're drinking water, that has an effect on them somehow. And as a result, Yaakov receives a very large portion of the flock because they're all born spotted and speckled. And Yaakov manages his flock very well because part of this now is his flock. He's working for Lavan, taking care of Lavan's flock, but he's also taking care of those that are his. So as a result, Yaakov becomes wealthy. His wealth increases. We then come to the fifth section of the parasha about Yaakov leaving the house of Lavan. It's very clear that Lavan has changed his attitude towards Yaakov. He no longer is grateful for the bracha that Yaakov has brought into his household. Instead, he's jealous of Yaakov's success. And Hashem tells Yaakov that it is time for him to return to his birthplace. Remember, he made an oath. It's time for him to fulfill that oath and go back to the place where he had anointed a pillar of a stone and go back there and make it into a proper house for Hashem. But in order to do that, he has to take his leave of Lavan. Yaakov convenes a special meeting with Rachel and Leah out in the field, and he lays it all out for them. He says, I have been only a faithful worker for your father all of these years. Um, but the fact is that Lavan has swindled me. He has changed my salary 10 times, and he keeps trying to swindle me. And the time has come for me to leave. And Hashem appeared to me, he says, and told me that I must return home. And Rachel and Leah say, do as Hashem has told you. So, yeah, Yaakov takes advantage of the fact that Lavan is off a distance away shearing his sheep. When that happens, Yaakov takes his entire household with him and he leaves the house of Lavan. In the process, Rachel steals something that Lavan has used for some kind of either sorcery or idolatry. They're called terafim, and she steals them. We'll see more about that in next week's parasha. But Lavan finds out about this. He pursues. Of course, he's not traveling with women and children and flock, so he can catch up very, very quickly. On the night before they are to meet, though, Hashem speaks to Lavan and tells him, be careful, do not say anything improper to Yaakov, whether good or bad. Do not deviate from the program, which is that Yaakov has to be allowed to continue. And then finally, there is a confrontation between Yaakov and Lavan. Lavan searches for the Trafim to no success, and Yaakov admonishes Lavan for the way he's been treating him. And then Yaakov and Lavan themselves make a kind of non-aggression treaty, and then Lavan returns home, but not not without kissing his daughters and his grandchildren goodbye. And then we come to the sixth and final section of the parasha. Yaakov is getting very close to the land of Canaan. He's not quite there yet, but he's getting very close. And he has an encounter in which there are angels that are exchanging, and it's very possible that the angels that came down the ladder to escort him to Chutz La'aretz are now returning to Shamayim, to headquarters, as it were, and at the same time, the Eretz Yisrael angels come to meet up with him. And because there are camps of angels, so Yaakov calls this place Machanaim, which means two camps. And that is the end of the parasha. There'll be more about the related to the Trafim in the future. I said earlier that we would talk about Lavan's claim that it is not proper to allow the younger to marry before the older. He says we don't do this, we don't behave that way in our place to put the younger before the older. And then he says, Malay Shavuazot, complete the week. We've been discussing the week of celebration. Malay Shavuazot, complete the week of this one. V'nitena lecha gam et zot. So the tricky part is the word v'nitena. Okay. So Rashi explains that the word v'nitena means we will give. The word is natan, that's the verb, and there's a nun added to the beginning. Instead of having two nuns, nintena, they're converged into one, and there's a negation next letter. But it means we will give. We will give you. So wait until the end of the week of this one, that is Leah, and then we will give you her, namely Rachel. But of course, you have to commit to working another 7 years. So this essentially is Rashi's approach to the word v'nitina. The Ramban, in commenting on this, endorses the explanation of Rashi, but he points out that Rashi doesn't explain why Lavan would be using a plural. Why does he have to say, and we will give? Why not pick something, or why not understand it in a more pedestrian way, namely, she will be given to you. And by the way, the same word could be interpreted that way as well. And the Rashbam, Rashi's grandson, actually interprets it that way. But the Ramban agrees that it should be "and we will give," but Rashi doesn't explain why Lavan is using a plural, "we will give." So he suggests one possibility that maybe Lavan is using a kind of a royal "we," but what the Ramban thinks is a better explanation is as follows. Lavan is saying to Yaakov, it's not proper to do this in this place, namely to let the younger marry before the older, because, as the Ramban explains, they would regard that as shameful to allow the younger to marry before the older. But wait until the end of the week, and then we, says the Ramban, that means all of us, all the people, not just I will be giving away my daughter, but we, the whole community, will agree to her marrying you. Put differently, according to the Ramban, Lavan is saying, look, if it were up to me, I would have no problem with you marrying Rachel right away, but I have a community to live within, and the only way that somebody can get married is if everybody agrees to the terms. And so all of us of this place will give you this one, namely Rachel. Then we will all consent, and then of course we will celebrate the wedding as appropriate. So according to the Ramban, Lavan is kind of taking refuge behind the community standards, the standards of the group. Once again, well, if it were up to me, I would behave differently, but I can't help myself. I have to do what the rest of the group says is appropriate for me to do. I thank you all very much for joining me in this exploration of Parashat Vayeitzei. This has been Rabbi Abraham Fischer for Parasha Highlights and Insights, saying Shalom.